Welcome back to Walk Drop.
Once again. Once again.
All right, so today we're going to talk about the dish Simon just made, Xiāng Qiézi, right? So Xiāng Qiézi refers to a fish-fragrant eggplant. So the term Xiāng refers to this flavor in the dish, this fish fragrance. And what that really means is that in Sichuan, where mostly river fish were made and this and that, they use this type of flavoring and these type of herbs to prepare this dish. So it's in reference to the fact that you're using very similar spices and herbs in a way to make these dishes as you would a lot of the river fish that were made in Sichuan. So you can have the Xiāng flavor when you do things like pork slivers, right? Or when you do fava beans, or when you do a number of other things. So this is just in reference to the kind of the spices that are used in the dish, not the fact that there are actually fish in this dish. Another aspect of this dish is the fact that we have eggplant in this dish. We've never talked about that before. So eggplant is a very, very interesting food in Chinese medicine. Eggplant is sweet and fairly cooling in nature. Eggplant enters the channels of the stomach and the large intestine. And when it does that, it enters into the bowels. Now, eggplant tends to cool. It tends to cool the blood. It tends to cool the bowels. And it also helps to move the bowels and stimulate bowel movement. So this means that eggplant can be used to treat things like bleeding that comes in stools, hemorrhoids, bleeding rectally, or even blood stasis in the lower jiao can be lower part of the body around places like the uterus, the urogenital area, and the anus. Because it moves into the channels of the stomach and the large intestine, it tends to move down into the bowels. In Chinese medicine, the idea of the stomach and the large intestine as a pair are in the idea of what we call Yangming, right? So the stomach and the large intestine are the Yangming pair, or this Yangming level, right? And this is the bowels, the stomach and the large intestine and the lower body, right? The middle jiao and the lower jiao. So these two organs, oftentimes when infected by an outside pathogen, can get very, very hot. You have a very hot expression of the body to try to push this out. And this heat that occurs can cause bleeding. It can cause intestinal constipation. It can cause bleeding of the rectum. It can cause sores and things around the rectum. It can have dysentery style symptoms. So eggplant can be used to treat this. Now, normally when you're treating that, you'd be steaming the eggplant or you'd be roasting the eggplant. Today, however, we're deep frying, so it actually warms the eggplant up. It doesn't make it as cooling as it normally would be, but just to give you guys an idea of what eggplant has the ability to treat, this is the reason why we're doing the video. All right, another aspect of eggplant, because we know that eggplant treats heat, we also know that eggplant tends to clear toxins in the blood. So eggplant has been historically also used as a poultice along with other things to put on sores on the body. It could be certain sores that create a lot of heat. So that could be things that range from insect bites, such as scorpion bites or even snake bites that cause blood stasis in the body, to things like hemorrhoids or pustules and herpes pustules that tend to be very hot and irritated and even bleed and have a lot of blood stasis associated with them. As we deep fry the eggplant today, it's going to warm the eggplant. You're still going to have the ability to break up blood stasis. You just will lose a lot of the ability to cool the blood. Now, in this dish, the eggplant and the general aspect of the dish is one that's warming, stimulating blood, invigorating the movement of blood, and nourishing and creating fluids, particularly for things such as stagnation that could come in from, or some sort of pathogen that could come in from the outside and create stagnation in the external aspect of the body or the bowels. This dish will treat that. Speaking of things that come in externally to invade, the other aspect of this dish is what we call pao hai jiao. Pao hai jiao is this soaked, fermented, or pickled chili pepper. So chilies in the body come in, they enter the channels of the spleen, the stomach, and the heart. They're very, very warming. They tend to move in and they warm the middle jiao. They invigorate and help to move fluids to the exterior to induce sweating. They also scatter cold. So any sort of cramping or cold that could come in that could keep the pores closed and not allow for sweating, these chilies will help to induce that sweating. Chilies also have the ability to dry dampness in the body. So if there's a lot of dampness in the body, there's undigested fluids, things that kind of sit around in the pores, and even phlegm, it can tend to dry it up and help to clear it out of the body. Chilies, oftentimes when coupled with fermented beans, such as fermented soya, such as we have here in the doubanjiang, have a tendency to warm and strengthen the spleen to deal with cold dampness in the body that tends to linger in the joints, things that tend to make the body heavy. So this, adding this pao hai jiao, pickled chili pepper, along with the aspect of the fermented bean paste, will have a tendency to tonify spleen yang, right? So it'll warm the body and make it stronger so that it can digest better. That mixed with eggplant will also have the ability to invigorate blood, right? And kind of break up some stasis. Now, you're not eating too much fried food in this case, it's just the eggplant and then you're stir frying everything else. But it's a fairly minor stir fry. You're not doing much as far as a deep fry. Most of it's in the stir fry. So you shouldn't have too many problems with this as far as a deep fry goes. Not only will the chilies help to dry up dampness, they'll also help to strengthen the spleen to reduce loose stools that can be from spleen deficiency, spleen yang deficiency. Also, chilies have the ability to warm and induce sweating, particularly when there is a cold invasion. So when you're coupling these things with things like the eggplant, which is fried in this case, and the doubanjiang, you're going to be strengthening the ability of the body to create fluids to help push to the surface to help induce sweating with an external invasion. The final ingredient we'll talk about today, because we've talked about a lot of these other ingredients in the past, is going to be the white sugar. White sugar in itself is fairly cooling or neutral, but you're adding just a little bit at the end, and it tends to enter the channels of the spleen, the stomach, and the lungs. It tends to nourish them when used in a minor amount. It tends to nourish the fluids, particularly moistening the lungs. So this will help to moisten the lungs, and it will help to moisten dry lungs. So in the fall, a little bit of sugar in certain aspects of food will help to moisten the lungs. Fruit sugars and whatnot, oftentimes when cooked or baked, help to moisten the lungs, particularly things like apples and pears. In this case, the little bit of sugar added at the end will not only strengthen the spleen and the stomach, but also help to move these fluids to the lungs that are being produced so that they can disperse their qi, so that they can promote the immunity of the body, and they can promote any sort of immune reaction that's needed if you have a cold or a wind pathogen, an external pathogen coming into the body. Say you've been caught outside in the wind, or temperatures are dropping and you start to feel a chill, and you can't sweat it out and you're feeling colder and achy. A dish like this would help to warm you up, help to induce sweating, and push this cold invasion out of the body. Just a thing to note is that right at the end of the dish, Simon adds just a touch of sesame oil. Now, you didn't see that in the video because the video cut short, but just remember that when you make your Xiāng Qiézi, if you're following the directions from Simon, add a touch of sesame oil, just a taste at the end to complete that dish. All right, guys, thank you for joining us this week on Walk Drop. We'll see you next time with more dishes and a lot more things to talk about. All right, until next time, be well, guys.